And welcome back, everybody. It's the Catholic Convert Show. We made it to the middle of the week, and we finally got confirmation that this Friday, we've got Enoch, the Catholic rapper, coming on the show. So we're all looking forward to that. But as of now, it is just little old me and just, old Ed. And we're here to assault your eardrums for the next hour. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. And we're going to start this episode a little differently than we have, any of the episodes in the past. You know, we, on a regular basis, we have what's in Ed's creepy basement or Ed's Vatican archive collection pieces that he brings up. Well, I'm going to go ahead and answer the question for what's in Ed's creepy basement. It's a dead guy. And he brought the dead guy onto the show today. So go ahead, Ed. Take that away.
Well, I mean, if you're going to describe it that way, I actually have about a dozen or so dead guys in my basement. But
I don't want to spoil it for everyone.
All right. But we're going to discuss, I'm sure most of the folks out there are very familiar with this young man right here, St. John Neumann. Bishop of Philadelphia back in the late 1800s or mid 1800s, I should say. And just a heck of a great guy. And so what I brought with me today, very exciting, is my first class relic of St. John Neumann. Hopefully you can all see that. I mean, we get a glare there, but there is right in the center there is a fragment of bone from St. John Neumann. Now, in case anyone's wondering, I do acquire all my first-class relics legally. You can actually look through canon law and see when, where, why, and how you can acquire relics. And so I'll give you a little background about St. John Neumann, because maybe not everybody does know about him. He was born, I believe, in 1811 in what is now, the Czech Republic. He studied in Prague. And then he came to New York at the age of 25. He studied there for about 4 more years. And then he became a Redemptorist priest and took his vows. And he was actually the first Redemptorist to take their vows here in the United States. He was sent then to work in Maryland and Virginia and Ohio, and was always very popular with the German immigrants in those areas. And so at the age of 41, he was sent to Philadelphia in Pennsylvania to become the bishop there of the Philadelphia diocese. And a lot of people don't know this, but he actually organized the parochial school system into a diocesan one. And because of his efforts, almost immediately, the number of pupils in parochial schools increased 20-fold. So that's pretty impressive. So we have a lot to thank St. John Neumann for as regard to our parochial school system. Interestingly enough, he was gifted with outstanding organizational ability, and he brought into the city of Philadelphia many communities of sisters and also the Christian brothers. And I know that back when I was in high school, usually our South Jersey basketball championship came down to my school and the Christian Brothers Academy, which is in South Jersey, right across the river from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So he was very big in the parochial school movement. 1963, he became the first American bishop to be beatified, and then he was canonized in 1977. He's actually buried in St. Peter the Apostle Church in Philadelphia. And if you get the opportunity, you got to go, because the entire basement of this place has been converted into a, what do you call it? What do you call those places, Jeff, where you go and you visit saints? I don't know why the word is escaping me right now. No, not a reliquary. This is a reliquary.
Shrine?
But a shrine. Oh my gosh. See what happens when you get to be my age? You can't think of the word shrine. But anyway, but there's a shrine for St. John Neumann there in the basement of St. Peter the Apostle Church of Philadelphia. But it's a massive place. They have a beautiful area for sitting and reflecting and meditating. They have a huge gift shop, which I frequent because it's incredible. You can go there with a group of folks because they have a small little cafe, sort of. And then you can go into the chapel that's down there.
Wait. Coffee
Yeah.
shops in Catholic churches and those things. That's a Protestant thing.
It
All
is.
right.
But
Come
listen,
on.
but this is, this is for the shrine, and people do travel, they take bus trips there and stuff like that. But you go into the chapel area and you can actually see St. John Neumann because he is encased in the altar. So you see him there. He's in his bishop garb. He's a very, very small young man. And he was young. He was only 49 when he passed away. And they have a museum there to him as well, which is phenomenal. I can tell you, I've visited that several times. And what happened was, so he was born in 1811. I believe it was 1860 when he died. And he was actually running errands in Philadelphia on a very cold, snowy day, and had a heart attack and died on the steps of another church, not his church. In fact, it was a Protestant church. But the museum at some point actually acquired those stairs, and those marble stairs are in the museum as well. And I will tell you, the very first time that I visited that shrine, I reached down and I touched those stairs, and man, I felt something. It was pretty incredible. I mean, imagine, reaching down and touching these marble stairs where a saint had passed away. And Jeff, I've discussed this with you. I've got so many stories that go along with St. John Neumann. I'm very blessed to be so close to his shrine and be able to visit fairly often, at least once or twice a year. And I will tell you that when I was a teenager, or I may not have even been a teenager quite yet, but it was right around the time that he was canonized. And I was in Philadelphia with my mother. My mother, anyone who knows me knows my stories about my mother. She suffered greatly in her entire life from a number of ailments. And one of them was arthritis that was racking her body. And she was only in her 40s at the time. And I used to go to Philadelphia to Temple for injections into various joints that would relieve some of that pain and some of the swelling for a period of time. And one time I was there, we took the train into Philly because my mom didn't drive. She had gotten very bad news. Here she is. She's in her late 40s and maybe around 50 years old. And a doctor is telling her that within a matter of months, she was most likely going to be wheelchair bound because the arthritis had progressed that much. Well, my mom, she didn't shed any tears. She didn't get upset. She said, "Hey, on our way back to the train station, let's stop in and visit at the St. John Neumann Shrine." And we did that, and we went and we prayed. And for me, it was remarkable to see a saint actually there behind glass. I had never seen anything like that before. But I will tell you this, within a few months, my mother's arthritis was completely healed. And I do have also in the basement down there, I have the before and after x-rays of her hands. And I'm telling you, initially, if you looked at the x-rays of her hands, the bones were bending in every which way other than the way they should. It was a mess. And then a few months later, all of her fingers were straight as arrows. So at least, I mean, she had other things that she suffered with for the remainder of her life, but at least she never became wheelchair bound. She never relied on anything, walker or cane or anything like that for the rest of her life. So we were always very thankful to St. John Neumann for giving my mom that reprieve from some of her suffering. And so if you guys are in Philadelphia, if you have the chance, I believe it's on the corner of 5th and Girard. It's a nice little neighborhood. Beautiful church, too. St. Peter the Apostle Church is gorgeous. But you go downstairs into the shrine area, and you will be blown away. I will tell you that.
Now, you've told me this story before. I don't think other people have heard it. But didn't you tell this story to a priest who was in possession of that relic that you have now, which is why he gave it to you?
This is exactly why I have this. I was speaking to a Redemptorist, and he said I may have something very special for you and your family. And a month or so later, I received this in the mail. And I am very thankful to him and for the Redemptorists, and obviously to St. John Neumann. Just an incredible, incredible man.
See, it's stories like that that I struggled with before I came to the church. Right? It's one of those, did it really happen? You know, like I said, I was never an atheist. I was an agnostic. I was a skeptic, right? I was like, maybe I might be. Who am I to say? I'm a mere human. I'm not arrogant enough to say that, yes, I'm 100% sure. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm arrogant, but I'm not arrogant enough to say I'm 100% sure that there's no existence of any divine supernatural. You know, I was never that way, right? But as I worked my way through my conversion, 18-month long process, and then another 14 months on top of that, finally coming into full communion with the church. Obviously, my opinion on those things is changed to where it's not even an opinion anymore. It's, yes, those things are real. But you're talking about how you've got several first class relics in your possession. I was looking on my church's website recently because we've got a lot of improvement projects going on that we're funding, and one of them is we have our pews getting reupholstered. So I got to go down there Saturday and help them reinstall the pews that are newly recovered and reupholstered. I believe the kneelers too, on Saturday, and then Sunday we're taking off the next section. So we're doing it in sections week by week. It'll take about 6 weeks to get everything done because these sections are huge because we've got a very large parish. But I was on the website looking, and I saw that there was also an opportunity to purchase some or to donate for the new missile fund. We've got the St. Isaac missiles that needed to be replaced. So I went ahead and did two of those for my family, dedicating one to my wife's mother and one to my father. But then I was looking at some of the relics they have, again, because I knew that you're in possession of quite a bit. But I was curious about the relics that we have in our church. And so on our high altar, we've got Gabriel of the Sorrowful Mother. We've got Saint Cecilia. We've got Saint Francis of Assisi. We've got Mother Teresa, Saint Lawrence, Saint Sebastian. On the altar of sacrifice, we've got Celos. We've got Therese of Lisieux, Peter, Augustine. And then inside the altar, we've got Linus, Callistus, Pius X, and St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. And then there's two more over that are in reliquaries on the wall that is on the exterior wall of where you would go into our adoration chapel. And one of those is Jose Maria Escriva. And I can't remember the other, but it'll probably come to me later. And I got to say, it was All Saints Day last year when we had the huge procession at the 7 p.m. Mass. And my daughter was chosen. Well, my family was chosen to lead the procession, following the priests and the acolytes into the church. And my daughter got to carry the relic of St. Peter in the procession throughout the church as everybody filed in. And I gotta say, I never appreciated having such close proximity to the saints before that day. And so I can only imagine how it feels to you having right there in your basement. Not saying it's still not kind of weird. I mean, at the very least, bring them out of the basement, right? They're not old golf clubs.
No, no, they're not.
Bring them out of the basement, set them on a table somewhere.
Well, that's the thing, and actually, I'm working on creating a small room in my home, which would be because so many people have home home altars or home prayer rooms, and I think that's such a beautiful thing. I mean, I've got sort of that going on, but I want to make it more formal, a place where it's going to be my area to shut off the rest of the world, say my daily prayers, spend that time with the Lord. And so that is certainly a goal of mine. And it's part of the reason why I have some of these items. And certainly all the relics I have will be prominently displayed once that takes place. And to me, I mean, people will say, well, why do you have this stuff? It's especially with the relics, things like that. Some of it's so macabre or whatever you want to call it. But to me, you and I talk about so many times, Jeff, how the history of the church is so deep and so rich. And I want to say that it's so real, I mean,
and it's obviously fascinating.
It's very fascinating, but I have all these things. I mean, think about all the, I've got a dozen or so, 15 or whatever, papal briefs. We're talking about parchments that were touched by Pope Leo the 13th, Pope Pius the 10th, Pope Clement. I mean, this is phenomenal that I'm holding on to these things that these various popes were holding on to with the relics. I mean, honestly, to have, call it, weird if you want, but to have a piece of an actual saint in my hand, it makes it real. And then we talk about intercessory prayer as Catholics. And I know, a lot of Protestants will poo-poo that. But to me, this is why my mom was healed, because of intercessory prayer, because of asking St. John Neumann, who could definitely hear her and hear me, to say, hey, St. John Neumann, you're there, you're with Christ. If you could just talk to him about my mom, if you could just tell him how wonderful it would be if she were healed of this one little ailment out of so many, it would just make her life that much easier, and she could go on to serve and love you. And St. John Neumann had that conversation with Christ, and because of that, that gift was given to my mom. I believe so strongly in that. I have so many stories like that throughout my history and throughout my family's history. And I mean, just another one briefly, my daughter, who is such a wonderful young lady, she's now 29 years old. Was married just last year. But this kid, at the age of 15, had a lung collapse spontaneously, and it was a complete 100% collapse. Well, it happened during school. She went the rest of the day with a fully collapsed lung, never complained, just even took an exam that day and came home, said she wasn't feeling that well. She went to bed early, wakes up in the middle of the night. I mean, pale as a ghost does not describe it. Could barely breathe. Rush her to Children's Hospital in Philadelphia, where we find out about the collapsed lung. Well, over a course of the next couple of years, she spends most of her time in hospitals, not in school. And because she had multiple collapsed lungs, multiple surgeries, multiple procedures. And they kept saying, this is the last time it's going to happen, because this is just such a rare thing. We've never seen it. It's rare for a girl to have a spontaneous combustion, a spontaneous lung collapse. It's excruciatingly rare for it to repeat itself. And here, by the time things were done, she had, I think, 7 or 8 collapsed lungs. She had more chest tubes than anyone should ever have to bear in their life. That poor kid, and never complained about it. Never. I mean, God bless this young lady. She is such an inspiration to me. But the reason for this story is because this one time where we thought everything was going well, and she had seen so many different experts, and we actually had a man who was referred to as the godfather of thoracic surgery taking care of her. And he said, I think we got it covered. She goes home. We go in, and he said, and she still had a chest tube in at this point. And he said, listen, once I take this chest tube out, you're gonna be fine. There aren't going to be any issues. But what happens is we'll take the chest tube out, we'll do an X-ray just to confirm that the lung is fully inflated. You're ready to go, and we can send you home. He takes the chest tube out. They take the X-ray. We're sitting in the waiting room, and he comes out and he says, "It collapsed immediately. I can't explain this. It collapsed." So you can imagine, after years and years of this, and just feeling, just being heartbroken for this kid so many times, and being so close to where we thought it was going to be a done deal. He says, "Listen, our offices here are closing. In about an hour or so, you can go across the street to University of Pennsylvania, where they can do another X-ray to confirm my findings, and then we'll check you in, and we'll just have to decide what to do from that point forward." So we were so down. I mean, we sat there for an hour, nobody speaking to each other. It was just because we had come so far, and we thought we were towards the end, and here they are saying we're going to start it all over again. But we go across the street about an hour later. We're walking through University of Pennsylvania Hospital, and we're walking to where they send us for the X-ray. And I noticed we're walking right past their chapel. And I said, "Well, we've got a few minutes. Let's just go in." We go into the chapel. Everyone in the family winds up just on their own, going to a different corner of the chapel and just silently praying. And we prayed 5, 10, 15 minutes. And then we got back together. We went down the hallway. We went in, waited another 20, 30 minutes before they called it in for the X-ray. And they take the X-ray. We're waiting because we know she's going to be checked out at the hospital. And then finally someone comes out and says, "Okay, you guys can go now." And I said, "Oh, go where? Do we go to registration? Where do we go?" And she said, No, you can go home." "What do you mean you can go home?" She said, the X-ray is clear. There's absolutely nothing wrong with her lungs." And we were kind of skeptical. We're like, wait a minute. Wait, what's going on? We had to talk to the doctor. He comes out and says, "Yeah, there's no collapse. Everything's fine." On the drive home, I just took a poll because I was curious. I said, "What did everybody pray for at the chapel, if you don't mind me asking?" Every single member of our family had the same prayer. It was basically, "Christ, we've been through so much with this. This little girl has been through so much. She has suffered so greatly. We're not asking you to heal her lung. We're just asking you to give her and us the strength to deal with whatever it is that's going to come next. It's all we're asking for, just the strength to keep going on." Nobody asked for the lung to be completely healed. Nobody asked for a miracle. We asked for the strength to be able to deal with whatever was going to come next. And what came next was a completely healed lung. I can't explain it. Doctors there couldn't explain it. I mean, an hour earlier, she had a completely collapsed lung. I don't know what to say other than thank you, Lord, and thank you for just one more miracle in my family. And I'm happy to say it's been years since my daughter has had any issues with her lungs. After going through, like I said, 9 different collapsed lungs, 9 different chest tubes, multiple surgeries, multiple procedures. And there you go. It's the power of prayer. It's the power of intercession. It's the power of all those who have come before us in the church, praying for us. We're all, like we say it so many times, we're all part of that communion of saints. And thank God that we are, because as a group, there's nothing that we can't overcome. There's nothing that we can't get through.
Okay. I did not know that story. And you and I have talked extensively about our families to each other.
Yeah.
But wow. Yeah, that's an incredible story. And praise God. That's I guess we got to wrap it up now. I got nothing to add to that.
Jeff, I mean, what's there to say? The thing of it is that, we have such a wonderful God. We have such a loving God. And he doesn't always take away all the pain, all the burdens, but he puts us in a position where we are strong enough emotionally and spiritually to deal with it. It's people try to limit God's ability so much, and I don't know why. I mean, he's God. He can do anything, and he can help us to do anything. Was it, from Philippians, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And it's true. As long as you call on the Lord, your problems aren't going to go away. Jesus tells us, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. So you're not going to get rid of your problems. You're going to suffer. You're going to have issues that come up. But are you going to try to do it alone? Many people have done that, and they have failed miserably. If you do it with Christ by your side, you're going to get through. You're going to move on.
100%.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got nothing to add to that. You covered everything. But yeah, when we're talking about being in such close proximity to the saints, the power of intercessory prayer, and obviously you wanting to set up a prayer room where you could actually put these saints that you are in possession of. And I've been wanting to do the same thing, and I've talked to my good friend Adam, him and his wife are godparents to my children, about this same thing. I'm like, okay, I want to set up a home altar, so I have a place where I can, when I come back here to my office, I can do it right over here in this corner that's opposite my desk. I've got enough space there if I move all of my wife's purses and find a new place for those, but it's a good space for an altar, maybe a little kneeler, small shelf. I was thinking earlier that I have no idea of what elements to include. Obviously, there'll be a candle, there would be a crucifix, a kneeler, some saint cards, and all this other. And I thought about kind of setting it up with the scripture cards like what you usually see at the traditional Latin Mass, because why not? It's beautiful, and those and the scripture is amazing. But the reason I started thinking about it more recently is, this past Saturday I came into full communion with the church, and since then I've found myself much more conscious of sin, whether it be my own, whether it be the temptation to sin that I have, right? Because everybody gets tempted to sin. Everybody sins. It's concupiscence 101.
Exactly.
But I'm much more conscious of it now, primarily because when I first took the Eucharist, my first Holy Communion on Saturday, it was a very emotional experience.
Sure.
And then I took communion again the very next day at the Sunday Mass. Well, I screwed up, and I've either got to go to confession tonight, where we have the time set. And I do wish that we had a 24-hour availability for confession, but our parish is just way too large for that. And if we had about 1,000 less families, we still would be too large for that to be, a reasonable thing. Just with our two priests, 2,800 families at our parish, it's impossible, right? So we've got Wednesdays, we've got Saturdays, or you could make an appointment with the priest. So I'm going to try to make it tonight. If not, I'll make it Saturday, since I'll already be down there helping with the pews and stuff. But again, I'm much more conscious of my sin and my proclivity to sin. And it got me thinking, what would make it easier for me to remain as conscious of sin as I am now? Because I understand there's this, and I don't mean to cheapen it, but there's a bit of a honeymoon effect that happens when you're coming into the church, right? And I know almost every convert out there can relate to this. When you come into the church, you've got that honeymoon halo effect, right? Where you get really, really strict on yourself with adhering to whether it's certain devotions, whether it's making sure you're going to confession regularly, or doing everything you can to abstain from sin so that you're in a state of grace where you can receive the Eucharist, right? But with all things, complacency can set in. We've talked about that before. And we've talked to a lot of cradle Catholics and even converts themselves that, they converted 30, 40 years ago, and they ended up complacent. They kind of fell away from being as strict on themselves about following the tenets of the faith. And I was like, okay, what would make it easier for me? And I'm one of those guys that I have arguments with myself in my head. Like I say something in my head and then I respond to it in my head, and then probably a third person comes in there and starts arguing. Especially when I see a very visual reminder of something that I need to be doing, because it's true, with out of sight, out of mind. Now, when I wake up, my bed is just over here on the other side of this room. I wake up, I come over here to my desk where my phone's on the charger, and I turn off the alarm. The dog gets up and I take her out. Well, the first thing I see is this desk, and I've got this beautiful crucifix here. I showed it yesterday. Picked this up from the Holy Land. This was handmade. It's mother of pearl in Bethlehem. So, I mean, this is actual olive wood, overlaid mother of pearl and silver. It's beautiful. So it's one of the things that is always a reminder. I've got one rosary here. I've got a rosary here. I've got a rosary here. They're all just laying on my desk. I've got my wall covered in saint cards. But for some reason, I still forget to pray when I get up. What would be a reminder is me setting up an altar right there on the other side of my desk, because I literally have to walk right past it, and it's like the kneeler's there, so you know what you got to do at a kneeler, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that I've been trying to figure out. And obviously there's so many things that you can do to set up a home altar. But I'm going to have to kind of piece it together little by little, because some of the pieces are quite expensive that you would want for your home altar. I'm like, $300 for a kneeler? Hold up. I'm a carpenter. I can make a kneeler. Yeah. I'm like, I can make one. But yeah, that's kind of my thing. And I was wondering with you, lifelong cradle Catholic.
Oh boy.
You are very strict about, you wake up, you pray the Liturgy of the Hours. Did it take a while to train yourself into being so consistent with it? And this is kind of a 3 or 4 part question. Did it take a while to train yourself to be so consistent with it? The second part is, if it did, how did you do it? If it didn't, how'd you do that? And if it did, has it always been that way? Or is it something you had to start later in life because you realized you were lacking it?
Wow. No, those are excellent questions, because I'm the perfect person to ask about that stuff, because I will tell you this: in certain areas of life, and prayer being one of them, I am lazy. I will just come right out and I will say that I am lazy. And so that's why things like Liturgy of the Hours are great for someone like me, because I'm lazy, but I'm also slightly driven by guilt. So if the Liturgy of the Hours, if my book is sitting out and it's the first thing I see in the morning, I'm going to open it up and I'm going to read. Now, once I get into it, I'm okay with it. And I will tell you this: when you do so many these things because you're telling yourself you have to, eventually you will gain so much spiritual strength from that you're going to wake up saying, I want to, not I have to.
Right.
And I'll give you a
It's
great
kind of like
example.
the 10-minute rule. It's kind of like the 10-minute rule. You
Yeah.
know, when I was training hardcore, I would get up at 3:30 in the morning, and then I
Yeah.
would go to the gym. I'd be there by 4, and I would train lifting until 5, and then I'd come home, spend the day, do my work, whatever, and then at 2 in the afternoon, I make the 25-minute drive to the gym, and then I'm in the ring or sparring or training there for an hour, and then I'm back home. And it was, I want to, even though the first 6-7 months of doing it, it was because I had to, because I didn't want to get
Yeah.
beaten to a pulp in the ring. So yeah, it later became something that I wanted to do.
Yeah, it does. And I'll tell you, like, I mean, the perfect example with me is the rosary. And people, they hear my stories about my mom and everything like that. And this is a woman who prayed minimally one rosary a day, often multiple rosaries a day, and loved doing it, looked forward to doing it. And I was thinking, man, Mom, there's so many things you could be doing. You could be downstairs baking me more cookies instead of praying a rosary. But
more meatloaf.
yeah, exactly. But I was never a rosary praying guy, and this is way, way, way into my adult life. And then with my men's organization, we would actually, part of our regular schedule, the first Saturday of every month, we would pray the rosary together. And the one thing is, I mean, hey, I'm in the group. I have my rosary. I'm gonna pray it, and I did, and people took turns leading the rosary. And for whatever reason, I don't know, it never came around that it was my turn to lead. Maybe I was missed a day or whatever. I don't know. But I'm just going along, and I'm like, let's get this. I'm thinking in my head, let's get this rosary done so we can start our meeting. I mean, I will admit it. That was my attitude. And then one day, the guy who was getting us all fired up and getting ready to pray the rosary that day, he said, "Hey Ed, by the way, you're going to lead rosary today." And I was like, okay, fine. So I had to pull out my cheat sheet because even though I'd prayed it so many times, I couldn't remember exactly the order of things to do, couldn't remember the mysteries and things like that. And we're going along, and I'm saying it, and I'm starting out, and I'm just speaking in a normal tone of voice, and we're going through it, everything like that. And I will tell you, about halfway through the second mystery that day, something stirred in me. It was almost as though I felt a presence near me, someone standing behind me. I don't know what it was. Looking back, I assume it was Our Lady. But before you know it, I'm belting out these Hail Marys and these Glory Bees like top of my lungs. By the time we get to the third mystery, not only do I remember it, but I'm giving a reflection before it, not anything written down, just off the top of my head. I'm giving a reflection to the third mystery. And we get to the fourth and the fifth. When we got to the end of that rosary, I was thinking, come on, guys, let's do it again. Let's keep it going. We don't have to stop because we've done all 5 mysteries today. And I don't know, ever since then, I have loved the rosary, and I have no issue praying it, and I have no difficulty in praying it. And I can only assume it was Our Lady saying, listen, I see you're putting in the effort. I'm going to give you that jolt. I'm going to give you that inspiration. Whatever it is that was lacking in you, that was preventing you from really embracing my prayer, I'm going to give you that now. And so things like that happen, but it's because I was persistent. I didn't ignore the rosary. I didn't not participate in it. I did it even though it was kind of almost half-heartedly. And then, but because I was, I guess in my mind, I was saying, really, I wish I could feel more deeply about this rosary. Our Lady stepped in and gave me that. So again, another wonderful experience for me. And so, you're asking about my prayer life. And I have to be persistent. I have to keep it up, because I will tell you this: if something happens where I miss a day or I miss half a day's worth of my prayers, whatever, I have to be very cautious the next day that I don't fall into, well, you know what, I missed it yesterday. One more day is not going to kill me, But when you get into that pattern of saying your prayers at a specific time every day. I mean, that's very key for me. If I have my schedule down, I know I'm doing certain things at certain days. I do all sorts of stuff. I will tell you this, as part of my morning prayer routine, I printed up these sheets that I start with every morning, because again, if it's not written down, I won't do it. But what happened was, I was like, well, what am I thankful for? What do I need to pray for? And so it starts off and it says, like, today and every day I will. And then I have a section on being thankful. And then it's being humble, then being hopeful, and then remembering those whom I love, remembering those with whom I have difficulties. And then I finish off with remembering those who are no longer with us. So I figure I've kind of got a
See, I
lot of.
like that. I like that. I need a system
I'll send
like
this to
that.
you. I'll send this to you. And this is just something I
Cool.
put together because it's because if I don't have that, I won't do it, Jeff. You know what I'm saying? That's who I am. If I don't have it written down, if I don't have it sitting in front of me, I won't do it. And so, but that, you can't use that as an excuse. You can't say, well, I'm not really into the rosary, or, saying daily prayers is not my thing. Well, make it your thing, and do whatever you have to do to make it your thing. And that's what I do. So now I love prayer. I love the daily readings. I'll flip open, I have my own missal, and I'll flip through and I go through the day's readings every day, because here I'm a lifelong Catholic, and it was probably only 20 years ago that I realized that the three readings are connected. You know what I'm saying? So silly stuff like that. It is just, and now that I see it and I see the connection between the Old and the New Testament things, I'm like, wow, that's mind blowing, but the more you get into it and the deeper you get into it, the more you want to get into it, and that's part of the reason why I do all the stuff I do. We're going to be starting next week our summer session, which is the Emmaus journey, where we take a deep dive into each Sunday's readings. And it's just such a beautiful thing. We see the look on people's faces when they get it. They understand now, even though they've read that same reading so many times in their life, all of a sudden now they get it. They understand what Christ is trying to say to us. So, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if that helps out at all, but that's me and my story with prayer. It's kind of like I have to push myself until it becomes a part of my life. And then once it becomes a part of my life, I need it in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that makes sense. Like I said, I'm one of those systems guys, right? When I would get up at 3:30 in the morning, it was easy for me to just say, all right, now I'm going to the gym, because my gym clothes are already laid out. I just wake up, put them on, and immediately grab my keys and head out the door, giving myself zero time to negotiate with myself. So probably doing something along those lines would be helpful for me, and probably helpful for a lot of people, because I know there's several people who watch and listen to this show who, they end up, man, how do I just get better at this? And the real thing is, you get better at something you're not good at by doing it more, right? It's a skill. If you think of prayer as a skill, and it's kind of like playing a piano. You don't get better at playing the piano without playing the piano, right? You don't get better at running without running. I get it. It's just even remembering to start. I think having a system in place like what you're just talking about would definitely help.
Yeah, you have to do. I mean, it's got like,
But,
it's not like when Michael Jordan got cut from his freshman basketball team in high school. He didn't say, well, maybe if I take the next 10 years off and don't play basketball, I'll make it in the NBA. He knew that if that's what he really wanted, he was going to have to buckle down, and he was going to have to really, however hard he was working, apparently he was going to have to work a lot harder. It wasn't an Einstein. Didn't Einstein flunk the fourth grade? I think, where he got held back in the fourth grade or third grade or something like that. So, he could have decided, well, I'm pretty much a dumb kid. I don't think I'm going to study anymore. But he didn't. And so that's the thing. I mean, I'm the first guy to admit I'm horrible at praying. I'm the worst at it. So what do? I do it more, yesterday I shared on Twitter one of the many prayers I've written, because I also find that if I write my own prayers, I can really, in that manner, pour out my heart. And I feel like that in that way, Christ really knows where I'm at in my journey to Him, what I struggle with, what I need His help with, and then that's a prayer I'm more likely to repeat because it's straight from the heart, and it has all the things that I spelled out here. Jesus, these are the things that you've given me that I'm thankful for. Here are the things that I'm lacking in and I need help with. And so it becomes, again, just like I talked about earlier with, I have all these relics and things because it makes the faith real. Well, this makes my connection to and my relationship with Christ more real. When I'm saying, you know me, Jesus, you know where I'm lacking, you know what I struggle with, but I'm going to say it out loud right now. And so I have those particular prayers that I use. I've got ones for Eucharistic adoration that I've written. I've got daily prayers that I've written and things like that. And honestly, I'm thinking of one day I'm going to jot all these down and put them in a book. I don't know if anyone would ever buy a copy, but it would make me feel good that I made it available to folks.
Yeah, that's the great thing about books, man. Doesn't really matter if no one buys a copy. You could say you did something. You could say you wrote it.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding. It absolutely matters if no one buys your book.
But you can say I'm published.
Yeah, you could say I'm published. It's a great conversation starter at the coffee shop. Just walk in and randomly tell the barista, I'm published.
Yeah, to which she will say, yeah, so am I.
No. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I write fish romance novels. Cool.
Those are big right now.
Yeah. Those are huge. I mean, those sell like hotcakes.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what's been on my mind about this whole thing, or at least all day. It's getting stronger in your spiritual life, getting stronger in your prayer life. Because look, anybody that's spent more than 6 seconds around me knows that I am the furthest from holy that I could possibly be. I'm a horrible Catholic, just like every other horrible Catholic out there. There's zero piety to me. I'm always ready for a fight. And I lack a filter between my brain and my mouth most of the time.
Welcome to being human.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it reminds me of something that Father Larry Richards said in one of his men's conference. I believe it was the 2023 conference. He was in Rome. He was at St. Mary Majors, and he was talking to a 93-year-old bishop. And he asked him, because one thing Father Richards said, he's like, if you look at me, this is what a 57-year-old virgin looks like. Just saying. That's what he'll say, right? But he was talking to this 93-year-old bishop, and he's like, at what age does a man, an ordained man, a priest, a bishop, stop struggling with the 2 core sins of a man? And the 2 core sins of a man are, 1, lustful thoughts. It's impossible for a man to stop the lustful thoughts, right? And the second is anger. Now, anger itself obviously is not a sin, but when that develops into wrath, right, it is obviously a sin. And so the 93-year-old bishop looked at him and said, you have to ask me tomorrow because it already happened today.
Right.
It's not something you ever. Right? Yeah. He's like, you're 93. When do you stop doing this? You'll have to ask me tomorrow because I'm not there yet. And so, it's obviously it's human nature, right?
Yeah.
But again, being conscious of it, realizing that you don't let one sin cascade into another and continue to grow, to where you cross into grave matter. It's obviously important. But,
Yeah.
His response to that, him telling that story, was hilarious. And it made a lot of sense. And prior to coming to the church, and when I was first, I don't know, I'll say within my first few months of attending church, attending mass every Sunday, going to the Adoration Chapel, it's Father Richards, listening to him on YouTube, listening to his podcast that he posts up on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. It was him that was very instrumental in making me go, okay, yeah, I can fix this. Yeah, I can fix this. I need to do this more. I need to do this less. I need to do this more, so forth and so on. But it was how he approached it, of the very human side. Because it's easy when you're talking to a priest or a bishop, or, I mean, even the Pope, to be like, oh, this guy's definitely, you just automatically assume this guy's got it dialed in when it comes to, sinful natures and, erroneous facets of life. And then you realize that, you got a 93-year-old bishop going, yeah, I got angry today, really bad road rage. And then I saw a hot crossing guard, so had to go to confession. Like, oh, okay. All right. I got it. So, I mean, that makes the whole thing a lot easier when you realize that, they are just as human as you are. I mean, Pope Francis even says he goes to a daily confession.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes the whole thing a lot easier, but it's still a struggle and a balance, especially in that honeymoon phase of being in the faith, or just still having that fire that you have for the faith, like what you got. When you have to balance with that good old fashioned Catholic guilt, and it's like, obviously the Catholic Church does not approve of this movie, but I think every Catholic has seen it probably. But the Da Vinci Code, where you've got Silas the monk, and he's sitting there in his room, and he's flagellating himself with the cat of nine tails on his own back, and he's got that leather strap with barbs around his thigh, and every time he sins, he tightens it up, or he beats himself in penance. We all do that, hopefully just metaphorically, right? But you're like, I totally get it. When I think about that scene now, I'm like, I totally get it. It's like you want to smack yourself for screwing up because it was wrong. But it is great to have that insight that, oh yeah, priests, bishops, cardinals, popes, they all screw up too. They all still got to go to confession. And it's really nice to have the ability to remain conscious of your shortcomings, sort of, because then of course you fall right back into that Catholic guilty. You're like, oh, I suck. I need to suck less. But
here's the thing about that, though.
But again, it's good though. It's good because we should be self-reflecting, and it's an opportunity for us to grow stronger in our faith.
It absolutely is, because you there's the two different dangers. There's when you realize, when you reflect on your sin, are you going to be paralyzed by it? Are you like, because you hear people say, oh, God doesn't want anything to do with me. He knows I'm a sinner. There's nothing I can do at this point to change. What's the point of even trying? And that's terrible, because you don't ever want to fall into that. But then there's the folks who go a little bit to the other extreme, which is, well, God loves me, and he's going to love me despite my fallings, despite what I've done wrong. And so I can go on the way I'm living, and everything's going to be wonderful, and I'm going to wind up in heaven and stuff, because Jesus loves me, and he died for me, and he loves me despite the fact that I sin. So you don't want to reflect on your sins and then just spend your time thinking, I need to be punished. I need to be punished. I need to be punished. And you don't want to get to the point where you're like, well, I sinned, but who cares? You've got to have that, yeah, I'm a sinful person. I'm going to confess that sin. I'm going to repent for it. And I'm going to pray that I don't fall into the same sin again. And I'm not going to be paralyzed by it, but I'm going to go forward and I'm going to try, knowing full well that at some point you are going to fall. We are still human, regardless of how much we'd like not to be. And so it's really a matter of how are you approaching it. It's so funny because like I'll see that on Facebook sometimes, or not Facebook, on X, where I'll usually, it's not my quote, it's a quote from a saint about trying to live like a perfect life, trying to live as Christ lived. And then I'll get bombarded with that. It's just crazy. What are you doing? Nobody can live that way. You're fine the way you are and everything like that. And then I'll respond with like a quote from 1 Timothy, Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the first. And then I get bombarded with the people saying, oh, don't be so hard on yourself. You're not a sinner. Christ died for you and for your sins. And so you can't consider yourself a sinner. I'm like, all I'm doing is throwing quotes at you guys, give me a break here. But it's true. But listen, I know that I'm a sinner, but it's not paralyzing me. I'm just right. Confronting the reality,
Right. It's the unfortunate side effect of having to take responsibility for your actions.
Yeah. Right.
It's like that dastardly accountability.
There's nothing wrong with
that. It's that thing that all women run from, right?
Whoa.
I couldn't help it. I had to make that joke. I showed my wife a meme the other day and she thought it was hilarious. So I felt I was okay to say it. The meme was this woman lying in a hospital bed full of IVs and a breathing tube. It said, "Woman accidentally discovers accountability." It was hilarious. Anyway, he thought it was hilarious. So that's all that matters.
Yes, there was one on yesterday. There was one on, I don't know where I saw it, Facebook or X, whatever, yesterday. Hilarious, I thought. There's these two guys, they're hunters, and they're all geared up in their hunting gear. You can see the truck in the background. They've got their rifles out, and they're right alongside. They're on this like cliff, and they're looking down over a highway, and you can see that there is a funeral procession going by on the highway. And, the one hunter had paused, and he's just looking down on it very reverently. And the other guy says, "Man, I'm so impressed, Joe or whoever. I can't believe you're so faithful. You're so reverent that you'd stop to observe this funeral going by." And the other guy says, "Well, we were married for 35 years. It's the least I could do."
Awesome.
So he stopped his hunting for 5 minutes to watch his wife's funeral go by. But there you go.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's
the important things, right? Yeah.
Good stuff.
No. Yeah, good stuff. But I don't know. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what other saints you'll bring onto the show. I've never had a saint on the show before, and today was the first time.
Today's first
awesome.
One?
So yeah. So maybe the next guy that comes on the show.
Maybe it'll be Saint Peter Chanel. You don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe we'll get fortunate enough and you can bring up what was it, Christ's foreskin that we talked about yesterday. Since there was 17 of them floating around in antiquity.
I've only got 3 of them. I've only got 3.
Only 3, right?
Only 3.
Not weird at all, but okay. But all right, we'll wrap this one up. Like I said, we got I almost said Chance the Rapper, but that's not correct. Enoch, the Catholic rapper, coming on Friday.
He's awesome.
So yeah, we're gonna look forward to that one. But until then, y'all be good to each other, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and God bless.
Yep, God bless everybody.